Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our afternoon panel entitled Scaling Quantum Networks. We're going to do our best not only to keep you awake, but to inform you and maybe even entertain you. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Vida Cooper. I work at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. I'm the Deputy Program Manager for Strategic Initiatives in our Exploration and Space Communications Projects Division. In addition to that, I'm also the Executive Director of the DC-QNET, where we're working to build out a quantum network, a metro-scale quantum network here in the DC, Maryland, Virginia region. Today, we have three esteemed panelists with us. I'll introduce them. We have first Mehdi Namazi. He's the co-founder and chief science officer for Qunnect. In addition, we have Junya Nomura, the deputy director of the North America Center, National Institute for Information and Communications Technology, Japan. In addition to that, here at the end, we have Simon Patkovic from ID Quantique, Switzerland. He's the VP of Quantum Safe. And so now just to set the stage and some of the context for today's panel, we're right now living in a world, in a landscape where QIS is definitely a hot topic. We are seeing advances in quantum sensing, quantum computing, as well as quantum communications and networking, as many of you have heard today, even just this morning, some of the great advances that we're seeing. Within that landscape, we're seeing across the globe in different regions, so think Asia, Europe, and also in the United States, varying approaches as well as states of maturity in terms of quantum networks and the scaling of those networks. And so the main goal today is to be able to give you a snapshot from these three gentlemen here as to what is happening in each region from their perspective. So Mehdi will speak to the United States. Junya will talk about Asia. And Simon will provide insight into Europe, and they'll probably play off of each other a little bit as well, okay? So with that, I'm gonna launch into the first question, which really speaks to motivation, approach, and current state. So for each of the panelists, please describe the motivation for pursuing quantum networking and the approach and strategy to scaling quantum networks for long distances in your country or region. And why don't we start with Mehdi?
Perfect. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's always fun to talk about quantum networking, especially on behalf of an entire nation. But when it gets to the US, I think it's very clear that in the US, we're trying to put the focus on developing the infrastructure towards the bigger vision of quantum internet. Is it possible to build a distributed entanglement network that can connect quantum sensors, quantum computers, anything that is in nature quantum to each other, the same way that the current internet system does for everything, for computers and such. And when it gets to the motivations, why we care about this, which is always a very hard question to answer when you talk about infrastructure, because we always sometimes forget about that we are in the field of quantum information science. Quantum gets its power from entanglement and coherence and all those fancy things, but information gets its power from connectivity. It wants to connect things together. That's why internet became such a powerful tool, that it so much changed the way we use computers that if the internet goes out, we don't even have much to do with our computers for more than half an hour anymore. The same thing we are hoping that happens with the quantum internet, that it brings so much new capabilities and powers to quantum computers and quantum sensors in the future, that it can bring and takes everything to the next levels. But building it requires so many steps. It requires us to be able to get so good at distributing quantum entanglement at such high qualities and robustness that can actually be used for connecting quantum computers and sensors together.
Thank you. Junya, how about you?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me first. And the motivation, we are working on research on quantum network is in order to ensure secure networks in various sectors like government, healthcare, finance, and so on. And the Japanese government published its first national quantum strategies in 2020, 4 years ago. And after that, Japanese government is promoting a variety of efforts by increasing budget. But we NICT had been already conducting demonstration on QKD technology by collaborating with university and companies. For example, in 2010, we established the urban testbed called Tokyo QKD Network. This is the testbed. We can collaborate with university and companies to demonstrate experiment of QKD technologies. And in 2017, we conduct demonstration experiment on quantum communication network between LEO satellite and ground stations. So I believe to make quantum networks more user-friendly, integrating terrestrial and satellite systems is necessary. And other than Japan, other Asian countries like China, South Korea, and Singapore have published their own national quantum strategies, I understand, and they are conducting a variety of demonstrations by using their own testbed in each country. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. Thank you for the invitation, Vida. So ID Quantique started more than 20 years ago as a global pioneer in quantum communications, doing single photon detectors, quantum random number generators, and quantum communication, QKD, quantum key distribution devices, based out of Switzerland. And when we think about all of these technologies today, they have their use cases, and we have built and deployed production networks already that leverage the technologies that I described, QKD and QRG in particular, from Korea all the way across Europe and Singapore and so on. I'm going to show a slide later on. But so today it's really very useful for quantum safe to future-proof the networks against quantum threat for long-term secrets. And it's in production, and it's production-grade, telecom-grade equipment. So it's not a research-type technology any longer, at least some of them, right? So quantum comms is the most advanced part of the sort of a quantum realm. But in the future, in the near future, we're talking about, you see how much struggle there is scaling up quantum computing, right? And one way to scale it up is to cluster it up for parallel processing. And so quantum communication plays a role there. And it also plays a role in a much broader sense in getting quantum internet happening, which will then allow for quantum sensing and quantum computing to be leveraged properly. And so, we see a lot of that desire across the ecosystem today, quantum ecosystem, to work together to advance all of these technologies together for use cases and sort of getting an accelerated approach and avoiding quantum winter or anything like that, which I don't think will happen at all.
Thank you. Going to move on to the next topic area here. So the next question really wants to try to tease out progress to date and that type of insight on the landscape from each of our panelists. So please share your perspective on the current progress to date to scale quantum networks, highlighting any key benefits, challenges, current plans, and potential next steps in your country or region. What factors in the national and regional landscape have most enabled the current progress? And so for the second question, I actually want to start with Junya.
Oh, okay. Yeah, recently in Japan, last year maybe, we NICT expanded the Tokyo QKD network to connect new locations, users like government, financial sectors. And in addition, the Tokyo QKD network has been conducting demonstrations of TF QKD technology, twin field QKD technology, to extend transmission distance significantly. And plus, when it comes to the satellite quantum networks, I think it is essential to enhance availability and robustness by using multiple satellite networks like LEO, MEO, in addition to current links between geostationary satellites and ground stations. And one more important thing, I think, is to increase the number of users of quantum networks. In this respect, it is crucial for government agencies to act as anchor tenants or early adapters, I think. So regarding this point, Japan's national quantum strategies highlights this point and promote a variety of efforts to encourage wider adoption of quantum networks, including QKD. And one last point, the current mainstream QKD method, BB84, requires hardware specific to QKD technology, such as a single photon receptor detector. So this means QKD devices need to be separate from communication devices. So in order to solve this problem, Japan is also tackling CVQKD technologies, continuous variable QKD technologies. This technology can be implemented with general purpose hardware and integrated into a module, integrated as a module into optical communication devices. So I believe that advancing and the practical implementation of CVQKD technology will also serve as a momentum for widespread adoption of quantum networks, including QKD. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to highlight something interesting that Junya brings up. So as you talked about increasing availability, I'm hearing you also talking about evolving the architecture such that you're looking at LEO, MEO, and even geostationary locations for satellite assets to perform within the network and interact with the ground. So very good insight. Thank you. Simon, you want to weigh in next?
Sure. I wanted to flash a slide as well. So I don't know where to begin this topic or how to summarize an hour in 5 minutes, but I'm gonna do my best. So we've participated in a number of national quantum projects and some big networks that already exist, namely South Korean one, and then Singapore National Quantum Project, where we're working with Singtel on a similar network, which is also commercial network. So some of these networks are more research funded, some are already commercial, meaning they offer services to banking, finance, and government. So we already worked on these projects, and these networks are live. Korean network was the largest network outside of China. It's originally spanned 700 to 800 kilometers. Now it's much larger across the country. But in Europe, there's been spectacular things happening in Europe. So I was asked to talk more about Europe. So in Europe, as part of the overall cybersecurity strategy of the European Commission, and also as part of their digital decade, which is this decade, and their desire to become a cutting edge or on the forefront of quantum research and innovation, they had a desire to develop and deploy quantum communication by 2030 and have them be on the world map as a hotbed for quantum communication and in general quantum technologies. They released a couple of rounds of funding for that. And the first round started a couple of years ago. The original project started in 2019. Over the past 3 years, they have released these funds, and each round had over 100 million euros, which is approximate to US dollar, to national projects. So the first phase is a national phase where any country within the EU could apply to build their own quantum communication network. And we have worked with a number of these countries, supply systems to them. And so over the past 3 years, some of these have outgrown other networks. And for instance, in Poland, ran by the Poznan Supercomputing Center, and they do great things as well outside of just quantum experimentation with all sorts of technologies. There are now over 1,700 kilometer networks within Poland, which is over 1,000 miles, close to 1,100 miles. And you have many other countries who have deployed networks, like we have Bonn-Berlin link, we have networks that span out in Spain. Greece is this year doing a very large network. And you have a huge belt essentially forming across the EU that is national test beds. So these are research, but also they can become commercial depending on the contracts. They can be offered as a service to government and other entities. Next phase, which is already, the funds are provided starting next year, 2025, is called cross-border. And just the name suggests that now the next phase is to interconnect these national test beds, and which would be analogous to, in the US, would be like state quantum networks. And then suddenly you have cross-border where all of them start coming together. And so you will see, for instance, Polish 1,700 kilometer quantum network based on QKD. Technology-wise, these are QKD networks that are based on DV-QKD, prepare and measure QKD, which is the industry standard today, industry-grade equipment, very mature, interconnect with other countries. So you will see Poland connecting with Czech Republic in the south, Hungary, Austria, then Germany in the west. And so the idea is that to provide cybersecurity for all of the countries, including government agencies, critical infrastructure companies, to be able to tap into that hydro grids, and everybody else who needs that sort of a bulletproof, future-proof security. And the enabling technologies, which was one of the questions, what does it need? Well, it does need, obviously, sort of a national strategy in one way, and certainly to speed it up, you need some funding. But you also need an underlying technology stack, and they start with very mature QKD, but then they also require quantum key management systems, which means that QKD is a point-to-point system, by its own definition is limited to a certain distance, and if you want to scale the distances, you need to be pairing up and creating something called trusted nodes, which require physical security and so on. And that requires a lot of cybersecurity know-how to kind of cross these physical boundaries of how far qubits can go on an optical cable, and to do it to a certain standard. And when it comes to standard, another project that European Commission launched, which is worth mentioning, is Nostradamus project, where they are aiming, starting this year for the next 4 years, to standardize and certify the whole stack, so that there is a level of assurance around it when people start using these networks, that they meet certain levels of standards of cybersecurity.
Okay, excellent. Outstanding insight. Thank you. Mehdi, how about you?
Perfect. It's always amazing to see how much work is happening on quantum networking and
right.
quantum in general around the world. It's crazy. I think US is also doing a very great job, especially when it gets to do the balance between what's possible to do today and what we can do in the long term and in the future. Like when it gets to today, there are a lot of companies and groups similar to us, for example, who is very focused on what's the best you can do in terms of fidelity, quality of the entanglement, and rates. Today, there are companies like Aliro who are providing you like the software suite for networks so it can be used by much wider groups of people, not just scientists and quantum physicists. There are networks down in Chattanooga that are like commercial quantum networks that you can actually have access and use quantum. Like Kirk is sitting here, you could probably talk to him right now. He gives you access by tomorrow to an actual quantum network down in Chattanooga. So there are a lot of things that are happening today to make these quantum networks useful and accessible. But at the same time, there are so many different big quantum collaborations happening around the country to build quantum repeaters, to go towards quantum scalability of how to use entanglement for its actual promise of doing long distance quantum communications, doing distributed computing and sensing. So there is the BNL, Stony Brook collaborations doing neutral atoms. There's the Arizona, MIT, Harvard with the vacancy systems. There are the Berkeley groups that are doing with the ion traps, quantum repeaters. There are so many of these things, usually funded by NSFs and DOE and different agencies that fund these longer horizon projects that usually takes 10 years, 20 years to get to their fruitions. And I don't even want to talk about the space stuff because I'm nowhere qualified for these things next to Vida. And then there are more complex geometry of the networks that are coming up. For example, DC-QNET is going to be a network in the most critical part of the country with so many nodes, which are going to allow us to do the types of experiments that is not that easy to do because it's so tricky to deal with quantum when the number of nodes starts increasing and you have to actually manage how you're using your entanglement, for example, which is your very, very important resource, and it's not easy to increase the resource, so you have to get very good at managing it. So US is getting very good at how to deal with these systems, how to deal with having use cases and applications today and bring it out beyond universities and academia, so telco peoples and finance and other industries can use it, but how to keep the focus and eye on the big prize, the future of long-distance quantum network.
Thank you so much. So we've got about 6 minutes left. I do have one more question for the panelists. However, since the room has filled out a bit, I'm just going to pause and see, does anyone have a question that they want to pose to any of our panelists? Okay? Mm-hmm.
Hi, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to what type of data is being sent over these existing QKD networks. You know, are we sort of generating like fake keys just as a test to see how well the network works, or what sort of data are we using these networks for?
Maybe I can. Yes. So the nature of QKD is a principle of using qubits to generate keys for encryption, and so there is no information that's being sent that is user-friendly or usable information. Is the information required for the cybersecurity protocol to generate secure keys at two ends. So, for instance, if you have a 1,000-kilometer distance between two data centers, and they're connected with a QKD network, what these devices will do with a quantum key management system on top, when the encryption devices in these data centers require new key, you know, IPsec protocol, VPN protocols, they simply at this point in time do out-of-band key exchange. It's called out-of-band because it's not part of the VPN anymore. They simply send a request to QKD and say, well, I have a new session, I need a new secure key. And what QKD then and quantum KMS will do as a magic, they will send qubits along the network back and forth until these keys are generated, and tapping is not possible. So there's no way anytime in the future permanently that you can reverse this and get to the key. So when key is generated on both ends, the key is simply supplied to VPN, and then VPN does normal encryption as it would be. So that's the difference between how we used to do it, which is standard software algorithmical key exchange, which we know is going to become vulnerable in the future at an unknown date, versus doing it over QKD. So that's QKD today, right? But quantum communication, as I said, in the future brings a promise that we can cluster up quantum computing systems, and then you will have more so a data being moved around between quantum computers in forms of qubits.
Okay. Yes?
So again, I'm a casual, so forgive the question, but in QKD, you are using entanglement to detect a man-in-the-middle attack. Is that correct? So I mean, you basically, you can tell that someone is listening in on the private keys that you're exchanging because of entanglement. So if someone is listening in, all you know is you can't use the keys. You keep having to throw things away until someone stops listening in. Isn't that a problem?
Technically, you're correct. So there's the system we work on is not an entangle-based system, but there is a property of qubit, of course. As qubits move across the network, when they're sensed either by eye or by a sensor or any kind of machinery, right, they will change their properties. You're absolutely right. What the two devices will do, they will understand there's something wrong, and they will essentially cease to manufacture keys. And so, yes, you could technically do that, sort of a eavesdrop purposely to create some sort of a denial of service, right? Which I think where you were getting at with your question. So how these bigger networks are built, these QKD networks, they preemptively do that, and they build keys in advance for the VPN devices to use them, and they're stored in secure memory. So what happens is that the end user configures the overall network for how long of an outage they want to have the queue of the keys for. So for instance, 4 hours or 8 hours, or depending on the SLA of the network, right? If there is a problem, and you can have an eavesdropper, but you could just have a bulldozer, right? Creating that denial of service by cutting the line, right? Cutting the optical cabling. And so QKD networks have gotten much smarter nowadays. So if you have a ring, QKD ring with say 10 components in the ring, they will do the communication the other way around to go around the denial of service. So there are ways around it, but in principle, you're right. Once you're tapping, QKD will intelligently know that there's an observing eye in the middle, and then it will stop that sort of a key generation at that point in time. So, correct.
All right, thanks. So what I'll do next is I'm going to pose my last question, and you each will have 1 minute, okay? All right. So this speaks to cooperation, partnership, and acceleration. The QWC Quantum Accord seeks to connect regional ecosystems. How could your region or country potentially leverage the Quantum Accord and its signatories to grow partnerships, accelerate progress towards regional and national quantum goals in the area of quantum networking over long distances? Okay, we'll start with Simon.
Yeah, so we're very much in favor of that. And one thing I didn't mention on the European project is terrestrial and the satellite part of it. And we took part on the satellite part of it with quantum random number generator. It's part of Eagle One project. So we're going to see more of that in the future, and we're wholeheartedly support that as a sort of a global quantum connectivity and ecosystems.
Okay, thank you. Junya?
Japan is actively engaged in the international standardization activity in the ITUT or ISO-IEC, but such efforts like standardization cannot be achieved by a single country alone. So we need global partners. In my understanding, no Asian countries, including Japan, are currently joining in the Quantum Accord. So I hope Asian countries will join it in the future, because, as I said, Asian countries have high-level technology and demonstration its technology by using their testbed in each country. So through the Quantum Accord, like such global partnerships, we can achieve more smoothly international standardization and certification and evaluation system. We can realize, I think.
Thank you, Junya. And Mehdi, you're the closer.
Same. I mean, quantum networking, especially when it gets to doing these things in long distances, literally bringing quantum properties like on the surface of planet in noisy environments, is such an insanely big project that it goes beyond just one group, one country, one nation. We need to all come together and do it together. The part that I really want to see more is that we never lose the sight that this is still a massive research project, and research always requires its freedom. We always need to be able to innovate. We always need to have an eye on like maybe the best technology, the platform. We haven't even came up with it yet. We need to be able to constantly give freedom to the researchers around the world, especially to our allies, to come up with a technology, build and innovate rather than trying to like get the tunnel vision of like thinking that, okay, this is the path we found, let's everyone focus on these things. And as long as these collaborations leave the freedom for all the researchers to work on different technologies openly together, we will get there and we all will benefit from the advantages that the quantum networking will bring.
I think that's a perfect closing. So with that, we're at time. I'd like to thank you all for joining. I hope you've learned a little bit, some key nuggets to take away, but most of all, I'd love to thank my panel here, Simon, Junya, Mehdi. Thank you so much for your contributions. And if anyone has questions for them, we can, because there is a panel following this, feel free to engage them outside. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, happy to talk to all of you. Thank you.